Pablo Escobar, El Patron. He ordered the deaths of judges, politicians, journalists, and police officers without hesitation. At the height of his power, Pablo Escobar's war against the Colombian state killed thousands and turned cities into open graveyards. Pablo Escobar rose from a poor upbringing in Medellin to become the most feared drug lord in history. In the late 1970s and 1980s, his Medellin cartel controlled an estimated 80% of the world's cocaine supply. Planes loaded with cocaine flew into the United States every single night, flooding Miami, Los Angeles, and New York with narcotics. Escobar did not rule through business alone, he ruled through terror. His philosophy was simple: plata o plomo, silver or lead. Take the bribe, or take the bullet. Judges who refused bribes were assassinated. Police officers were gunned down in the streets. Bombs exploded in shopping centers, airplanes, and government buildings. In 1989, Escobar ordered the bombing of Avianca Flight 203, killing 107 people, simply to assassinate one political rival who wasn't even on board. His war with the Colombian government escalated into a full-scale insurgency, leaving civilians trapped in a nightmare of violence. At his peak, Escobar was so wealthy that he reportedly spent thousands of dollars a month on rubber bands just to hold his cash together. Rats ate millions of dollars stored in warehouses. Entire neighborhoods were built under his name, and entire neighborhoods were destroyed by his orders. Escobar died in 1993, gunned down on a Medellin rooftop. But his reign permanently reshaped the global drug trade and proved how one criminal could challenge an entire nation. Alphonse Al Capone, Scarface. He turned Chicago into a battlefield, leaving streets soaked in blood during Prohibition. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre alone cemented Al Capone as America's most infamous gangster. Al Capone came to power during the Prohibition era, when alcohol was illegal and crime became a booming business. Running bootlegging, gambling, prostitution, and racketeering operations, Capone controlled Chicago's underworld with brutal efficiency. His organization made tens of millions of dollars a year, the equivalent of hundreds of millions today. Capone dressed like a celebrity, lived like a king, and walked openly through the city, protected by corrupt police officers and politicians. Violence was Capone's main tool. Rival gangs were wiped out through drive-by shootings and public executions. In 1929, Capone's men dressed as police officers and executed 7 members of a rival gang in a Chicago garage, an event that shocked the nation. Despite his brutality, Capone cultivated a public image as a businessman and philanthropist. He opened soup kitchens during the Great Depression, feeding thousands, while ordering murders behind the scenes. Ironically, Capone was never convicted for murder. In 1931, he was finally brought down by tax evasion, sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. He died years later, broken by illness, but his name became synonymous with American organized crime. Lucky Luciano, the architect of the Mafia. He dismantled the old Mafia order through betrayal and murder. Lucky Luciano modernized organized crime into a nationwide criminal corporation. Charles Lucky Luciano wasn't just a gangster, he was a strategist. In the early 1930s, he orchestrated the murders of powerful mafia bosses to eliminate the old Sicilian traditions that limited profit. Luciano believed crime should be run like a business, not a family feud. After arranging the assassinations of Joe Masuria and Salvatore Maranzano, he reorganized the American Mafia into the 5 families, creating a system that avoided internal wars and maximized profit. Under Luciano's structure, organized crime expanded into gambling, labor racketeering, narcotics, and political corruption across the United States. Violence became more calculated, used only when profitable. Even from prison, Luciano maintained influence. During World War II, he secretly cooperated with the U.S. government to secure American ports and assist the Allied invasion of Sicily, proving just how deeply crime had infiltrated national security. Luciano was eventually deported to Italy, but the system he built survived him. Modern organized crime still follows the blueprint he created. Griselda Blanco, the godmother. She ordered murders while pregnant and watched executions without emotion. Griselda Blanco helped turn Miami into a war zone during the cocaine boom. Griselda Blanco was one of the most ruthless figures in drug history. Operating between Colombia and Miami, she pioneered cocaine trafficking routes into the United States in the 1970s and 1980s. Unlike many male traffickers, Blanco ruled through extreme violence. She popularized motorcycle assassinations, a tactic that allowed killers to execute targets in traffic and disappear instantly. Her personal life was just as brutal. She allegedly ordered the murders of multiple husbands and associates, including executions carried out in front of her children. Entire families were wiped out on her command. During Miami's cocaine cowboy era, over 200 murders a year were linked to cartel violence, much of it connected to Blanco's operations. Law enforcement struggled to contain the chaos. She was eventually imprisoned but released years later. In 2012, she was assassinated in Colombia, killed by a motorcycle gunman, the same method she once popularized. John Gotti, the Teflon Don. He openly mocked the justice system and walked free after multiple trials. John Gotti ruled New York while cameras followed his every move. John Gotti rose through the Gambino crime family by eliminating rivals and projecting confidence. After orchestrating the murder of Gambino boss Paul Castellano in 1985, Gotti seized control in a bold, public power grab. Unlike previous bosses, Gotti embraced attention. He wore expensive suits, smiled for cameras, and became a celebrity gangster. Court cases collapsed due to intimidation and jury tampering, earning him the nickname, the Teflon Don. Behind the image was violence. Gotti authorized murders, extortion, loan sharking, and union corruption across New York. Entire industries were controlled through fear. His downfall came from within. In 1992, his underboss Sammy, the Bull, Gravano turned informant, revealing recorded conversations that exposed Gotti's crimes. Gotti died in prison in 2002, but his rise marked the last era when mob bosses lived openly, before secrecy returned to organized crime. Meyer Lansky, the mob's accountant. He made organized crime rich without pulling the trigger himself. Meyer Lansky built criminal empires using numbers instead of guns. Lansky was the financial genius behind American organized crime. While others committed violence, Lansky laundered money, built casinos, and created offshore banking networks that hid millions. He partnered closely with Lucky Luciano and helped build crime syndicates across the US, Cuba, and Europe. In Havana, his casinos generated enormous profits, protected by corrupt governments. Despite his power, Lansky avoided prison for decades. He lived modestly, avoided attention, and let others take the risks. Ironically, when he died, the fortune many believed he controlled was largely gone, hidden, seized, or never fully traced. His true wealth remains one of crime's greatest mysteries. Carlo Gambino, the silent godfather. He ruled America's most powerful crime family without ever pulling a trigger in public. Carlo Gambino proved that silence, patience, and betrayal could be deadlier than bullets. Carlo Gambino was the opposite of flashy gangsters like John Gotti. He avoided cameras, avoided attention, and avoided unnecessary violence. But behind the scenes, he controlled unions, shipping ports, construction companies, and entire industries across New York. Gambino rose through the ranks by waiting. He let other bosses destroy themselves through greed and violence. When Albert Anastasia became too reckless, Gambino quietly arranged his assassination in a barber shop in 1957, a hit so clean it shocked the mafia world. As boss, Gambino built a criminal empire that generated millions annually while maintaining peace among crime families. Law enforcement struggled to touch him because he rarely spoke, rarely met openly, and trusted only a small inner circle. Carlo Gambino died peacefully in his bed in 1976, a rare fate for a mafia boss. His legacy proved that the most dangerous criminals aren't always the loudest ones. Vito Genovese, Don Vitone. He poisoned allies, betrayed friends, and ordered murders across continents. Vito Genovese was consumed by ambition and willing to destroy anyone in his path. Genovese fled to Italy in the 1930s to escape murder charges, but even exile didn't stop his criminal rise. While in Italy, he worked with Mussolini's regime and continued trafficking narcotics. Returning to America, Genovese plotted endlessly to overthrow other mafia leaders. His obsession with power led him to sabotage Lucky Luciano's influence and eliminate rivals through deception. Ironically, Genovese was ultimately brought down not by violence, but by a drug conviction in 1959. He died in prison in 1969, bitter and paranoid, a man destroyed by his own hunger for control. Vincent Gigante, the odd father. He pretended to be insane for decades to avoid prison. Vincent Gigante fooled doctors, judges, and law enforcement while running a criminal empire. Gigante wandered New York streets in a bathrobe, mumbling to himself, convincing everyone he was mentally unfit to stand trial. Behind the act, he was the powerful boss of the Genovese crime family. For years, his insanity defense worked. Associates spoke to him in coded language. Orders were passed through whispers. Violence was authorized quietly. Eventually, the act collapsed. In 1997, Gigante was convicted and sentenced to prison, where he finally dropped the charade. He died in custody in 2005, having played one of the longest cons in criminal history. Frank Lucas, Superfly, ***. He smuggled heroin into America inside military coffins. Frank Lucas turned the Vietnam War into a criminal pipeline. Operating in Harlem during the 1970s, Lucas bypassed the Mafia and built direct heroin routes from Southeast Asia. His product, known as Blue Magic, flooded American cities. Lucas lived openly, flaunting wealth while communities collapsed around him due to addiction. Violence followed drug territory disputes, and neighborhoods paid the price. Eventually arrested, Lucas cooperated with authorities, exposing corruption within law enforcement. His story revealed how deeply crime and government negligence intertwined during wartime. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, the man who built Las Vegas. He turned the desert into a criminal goldmine. Bugsy Siegel transformed organized crime into glamour and gambling. Siegel envisioned Las Vegas as a money machine. His Flamingo Hotel became the blueprint for modern casinos, but overspending angered the Mafia. In 1947, Siegel was assassinated in his girlfriend's home, shot through the eye. His death marked the moment when organized crime took full control of Las Vegas. Tony Accardo, Joe Batters, / Big Tuna. He personally killed rivals and later ruled silently for decades. Tony Accardo survived longer than almost any mob boss in American history. Accardo began as a violent enforcer for Al Capone, earning his nickname through savage beatings. Later, he transitioned into leadership, running Chicago's outfit with extreme discipline. Unlike others, Accardo knew when to step back. He avoided attention, let others take the spotlight, and died a free man in 1992, a rare survivor in the underworld. These men didn't just break the law, they reshaped cities, corrupted governments, and left scars that still exist today. Their empires were built on fear, silence, and blood, and their legacies remind us that power without limits always comes at a cost. If you want more deep, untold stories from history's darkest corners, subscribe, like, and comment on which criminal empire you want uncovered next. Because in dark history, the truth is always more terrifying than fiction.